It's just, I can't get enough of it. Are you seeing any anti-aging stuff yet in your data sets?
Yeah, actually, and
It's
I can tell
starting.
you about
Yeah.
some of it, okay? Because I'm involved in some of it myself, all right? Um, so it can this gets into this needs to be its own book and get into it in a serious way to let
I
people
am
know.
writing a book about it, by the way.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, this is cool. Then here's some serious material for you, all right? Not from the Antarctica side of it, not from the data sets, and not from the energy kind of things that it's talking about, but rather from a practical approach. Okay, so um, a few years back, we discovered this new industrial material, and it showed promise in a number of different ways. And it's a very unique industrial material. And we wanted to use this industrial material in a number of different applications. And we needed to make this. And so it was decided at an international level that we had to do certain things in order for this industrial material to be widely used in our industry. And one of the things we had to do was to determine, is it unsafe? And so the EU, actually, I think it was the UN at that time, or the science agency of the UN, decided they needed to know what the LD, the lethal dosage of this stuff was. And so they let a contract with a French lab, and the head of the French lab is a Frenchman of an Algerian descent. I bring that up because of it. It forms the basis of how he does things. Each culture puts an imprintation of how you. So science done by Hindus is different than science done by Algerians. They just take different approaches, just like software would be different. Anyway, so the Algerian scientist decides, because it's a contract, that what he's going to do is a small sample study and high doses until he kills his rats, basically, and we figure out what the lethal dosage is. And so he takes 12 rats, six females, six males, separates them out into two groups of six, three males, three females. One group's the control. They go over there and they live and they just eat corn and drink water and stuff. The other ones get this industrial substance. Now, the goal of the study was to see if we could take this industrial substance in a natural fashion and have it be lethal to us, as opposed to injecting it. So they did not initially inject it into the flesh or anything. And so they give this industrial substance to these rats. And they decided that the way to do it was to get the rats to eat it, so they dissolved it in olive oil. That turned out to be a hell of a task for them to do that alone. And they ended up doing this. And this industrial substance is given to these rats on a pretty massive dose once a week for a couple of weeks, because the Frenchman wanted to collect his money on finding out what the lethal dose was. He didn't want to waste years incrementally getting up there, right? And so that's why the Algerian aspect, the practicality of it, enters into it, because he determined the dose based on, he guessed that this amount would kill him pretty quick. Well, it didn't kill him. And it didn't kill him. And they were stuck at that dosage level because that's what they decided to go for. And they decided, okay, they'll use this dosage level, keep it up on a weekly basis, and continue it over time. And it'll accumulate in the rats, and it'll kill them. Then they can slice up in the rats and find out where they died, establish the lethal dose, and they're done. Well, time passes. All the control rats die. All the control rats had a 2-year lifespan,
Like,
or less, okay?
think of their thoughts while they're doing this, because they're wanting to earn some money, and they're like, oh crap. But anyways, this is
Exactly.
amazing what's going on. Okay.
Okay, so, and this you can find out. I'll tell you the substance, and you can go look it up, and you can validate everything I'm telling you. Okay, so they give the rats these dosages, and it doesn't kill them. And so some time passes, and you can look it up as to the amount of time. And then so the Frenchman says, well, these rats aren't dying of this. I've got this other contract to see what this lethal dose of radiation is. And so let's take a couple of these rats and zap them with this radiation, and we'll see what the lethal dose is, and we'll be done with them, and then we'll also be able to cut them open and see what's going on with this industrial substance we're feeding them. Well, radiation didn't kill them.
Wow. Okay.
And the radiation was well over lethal dose, well over lethal dose. Rats just sitting there laughing it off. They're happy. Bear in mind at this point, all of the rats have lived at least 1/3 again as long as they should have. They're all into their third year, and all these rats are genetically programmed to die around 2 years. And so the rats are going along. The rats have good fur. They look young. There's no problems with them. And finally, they start getting frustrated and they start euthanizing the rats. And because they tried cancer-causing chemicals to kill them off, they tried.
Nothing would kill them. Now they become
No,
immortal almost. Okay.
well, they become really hardy. All right. And so finally, they ended up killing them. And they killed these rats at very advanced ages for these rats, far beyond what they should have lived. And when they open them up, their brains are clean, their lungs are clean, their livers are gorgeous, their spleens are beautiful. They've got no problems whatsoever, in spite of all the radiation and all the cancer-causing chemicals they've been fed, to try and off them and see what was going on. And so whatever this substance is, it works on their system in such a way that it preserved their internal organs at a level that was youthful. Okay, in spite of the fact that the rats were aging, but the rats were not aging as normal. The amount of wear and tear they were showing was minimal. There was no hair discoloration, none of the skin issues, none of the systemic degradation that usually accompanies old age. And basically, they had no idea when these rats would die if they just kept feeding them this regular diet of this substance dissolved in olive oil. So they do this, and over the course of time, I think maybe the last rat was killed 3 times, and you'll have to look it up. I don't remember exactly, but I think it was killed at 6 years. So it was 3 times as old as the rat should have lived. And they just killed it because they had to know, and they had to end the study, and the guy had to get paid. And so they could not determine a lethal dose that way. So another group was commissioned to determine a lethal dose. These guys didn't mess around. They took some mice, and they injected the substance in a water base directly into the mice at the level of 1/10 of their body weight. And that killed them, okay? And it was an injection. It was intramuscular, but it killed them. And so they knew that if you had 1/10 of your body weight of this material injected in you, that was at least a lethal dose.
Well, but then they had to go down, right? They can't say
They didn't monkey about with it. No, they didn't.
They didn't. They just said you can get killed with this, but you have to. We know that 10% will kill you.
And it's got to be injected, and then it later on shuts down all your other systems. And they really couldn't say why it killed them. And then one of the doctors that was involved in the study said, well, if you just took the substance out of the water, just that much water being injected into your body is going to kill you.
That's what I say. Almost anything at that amount would kill you.
Right. So anyway, though, so this is where we're at on that. And at this stage, this is not a substance for human consumption. Okay, humans eat this substance constantly. We've been seeking. Well, I'll tell you in a second. We've been seeking this substance for as long as humans have been around. It forms the basis of alchemy. Alchemy was seeking this substance, which was the philosopher's stone, the perpetual life, all of this kind of stuff. They've been seeking it all of these different ways. The Taoists have been seeking it with and the yogis are seeking it with boiling down mercury and all of this kind of stuff. The substance occurs naturally in the planet. It's concentrated in the planet in various different areas. We have only become recently aware of it. The substance is called C60, carbon-60, Buckminster fullerenes, okay, buckyballs. And so buckyballs, these complex, so a carbon atom, we have many different, carbon is an interesting stuff because it has many different forms. Most, like gold, only has one form in nature. Carbon, we have carbon-12, carbon-14, carbon-16, carbon-18, et cetera, et cetera. Carbon-60 is unique because it takes the carbon atom and folds it back on itself so that all of the receptors from the carbon atom for connecting to other atoms are fully involved with their own molecule, if you will. Under those circumstances, there's no carbonic attachment to anything. So if you had a free carbon atom, it's kind of like not as reactive as an oxygen atom, but it'll glom onto you, so to speak, right? Because it's got a highly energetic particle that wants to stick to something. But this form of carbon does not have that. They don't know why it does what it does, but they do know that it does do that. Now, humans can get hold of this stuff. You can buy it. It's a readily available carbon-60, C60 is readily available from Europe in a purified form. You can mix it into anything you want and consume it. It occurs naturally in coal. It occurs naturally in this stuff called shungite. It occurs naturally in this other stuff called scheologite or asphaltum. So it's been known about since the time of ancient Rome. It goes all the way back into the yogic world, maybe 6,000 or 7,000 years. It was a necessary part of their revitalization programs that people would undertake. And that was really gruesome if you get into the yogic perspective of how they did it. But the goal all of the time in all of these various different mechanisms or schools was to concentrate this stuff. They didn't know it was C60. They just knew that animals that drank water from this particular water hole lived longer, looked better, didn't age as much, and so on. Turns out that water hole was in a base of shungite material, which is this like a primal material of the earth. Huge levels of C60 in it. Or maybe it was the in the Himalayan mountains, they would see goats, and they would even see animals from the deep forests work their way all the way up into the mountains to go and lick this black goo that was coming out from underneath these glaciers. And basically that was all of the material that had been smushed by the glacier into a very thin layer, all the biological material, and it concentrated the C60. And so that's been their form of it, coming in these various different ways. Now we know it exists. Now we know what the molecule is. And now we can purify it out of coal and all these other things. And now it's still an industrial product, but you can actually buy it. You could even consume it if you wanted and get its effects.
Mice, I don't know if rats, but mice don't have telomeres. They die from free radical damage in a speedy way. And so
Rats are the same.
Rats are the same. So I would imagine that it really takes care of your radical, your free radicals and all the things that attack our cells.
And that's how it's sold as an antioxidant, correct? But it does much more than that. Okay, it does interact with the telomeres. It does lengthen.
Does it lengthen the telomeres? Because the lengthening of the telomeres is, that's what they're finding. And but that's not the only thing that kills us. The free radicals and this other stuff kills us too. But go ahead.
But that alone, I mean, that is basically the
that's a big deal.
Yeah, that's your clock. Okay, I mean, you start off with X number of them, and like the yogis say, you're given X number of breaths, and when you exhale that last breath, near or far in time, that's the end of your life. Well, and so maybe the thing to do is to breathe slow, that kind of thing, right?
But your cells can only duplicate so many times, and each time it duplicates, your telomere gets shorter. Well, right. Bill Andrews, the one that actually found human telomeres, he's been working on it, and I have multiple interviews with him. Just amazing. He came out on my show and talked about how they found the solution. They have it. It's just really expensive. And so they're trying to find just for lengthening telomeres. Now he says, that's not the only thing he thinks. Although if your telomeres are longer and your cells are younger, now they can deal.
Can't hurt.
Well, can your cells deal with the free radical issue? Younger cells can deal with getting rid of free radical damage and all sorts of other things. So they don't know yet until you actually do it. But they are doing a trial with Madagascar, these little lemurs, because they're little primates that are tiny. And they have over 1,500 people signed up for the first trials that are happening in the East. But there's like over $2 million. So it's really expensive. It's not a solution yet for the average person.
Well, also it leaves us a lot of the stuff, as he notes, it leaves a lot of the stuff unaddressed. And here's where C60 is interesting.
Exactly. This is, and that's what Aubrey de Grey is looking at too. And this is awesome.
Okay, so on top of that, so let's look at C60 and some of its other ancillary effects. Not only does it mess about with the length of the cell degradation reproduction issue, right? The more you reproduce the cell, the sloppier the copies become.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, it deals with that. It also deals with the antioxidant issue, the free radical issue, instantly, because the nature of the buckyball is such that the free radicals want to adhere to it, and it's excreted. So it pulls these things right out of you. Also, the C60 molecule can cross the blood-brain barrier. So it's pulling out toxins all throughout your entire system. Also, as a side effect, humans, and I'm in contact with a great number of these humans through some French people I know. Not a great, for a large number. I can reach out to maybe 150 people that are experimenting with this material. Okay, that have had some number of years self-experimenting with this material.
And it's working?
Well, it's working in that it's providing positive benefits to them. Whether or not it's going to increase their age, we don't know. Okay, because they haven't gone to an exceptional lifespan yet, because it has been so. If you go on in and read about the Frenchmen and the trial with the rats and stuff, that's only a few years back.
Oh, okay.
So we've only known about this for a few years. I don't even think we've crossed 20 years yet
Well,
And I'm
are any
certain,
of them older where
yes, yes. And so
now
we
they're
have people that
younger,
are
like
in their
getting,
80s,
and so
and
they
they're
don't have wrinkles and all sorts of other things?
it's not instant, okay? It takes a while. So it is a reverse aging, not an anti-aging. So slowly it cleans up the free radical damage, and thus your skin, the next time those cells reproduce, don't recreate that wrinkle, okay? It removes these issues. It affects the internal organs. It creates new veins and hyperoxygenates your body. And it hyperoxygenates you down to the level of the mitochondria within the cells, but without the free radical damage. So it's not only hyperoxygenating you, it's doing so without the expected damage of all the oxygen.
Can you get it? The form that you're talking about that you could buy it, is that the
Yeah.
form you need, or do you need it in a different form for it to work that
No,
you're talking
no.
about?
You can go right now to I shouldn't say it because the guy probably, you don't know what they have to go through to create this stuff,
Well,
okay?
I'm going to buy some for my parents because they're getting close to
O-
80, so they're taking
Okay.
something.
All right. So, well, and you have to be, now you've got to understand this, okay? You've got to be very careful about this because this process is not gentle. All right. So anybody that takes this stuff, you will go through detox. Now, you could take little tiny bits and build up over time so that the detox was low level and continuous
Could
for
they
months.
detox on a different kind of detox substance first, maybe, or something?
No,
I don't
no,
know.
no, no. No, because
Because
that
those
would
aren't
seem
even
uncertain.
close. Those aren't
Those are
even.
not close, right?
Those are
And
not
so
even
we get
close.
different reports of different effects. Okay, so I know of one
Could
person
it
who
kill them?
had
Could the detox be so
no,
strong? Okay.
no. It'll make them extremely uncomfortable. People that are extremely weak. A woman that I know of that has had surgeries for brain cancer, has had 3 or 4 surgeries for her heart, has had 5 or 6 death experiences where her heart has stopped. She's taking it with very good results in spite of the detox. Okay, the detox is mainly
Sure.
gastrointestinal.
It's
Okay.
awful. I've had pretty hard detoxes before, and I feel like crap.
Well, okay, let's be real clear about this. This is a little bit more than that. Okay, this is not simply a
Especially for
purge.
two people that are older who don't really detox.
Right. And so you may need to really think about this. You have to be an adult with this substance, and it is not approved by anybody for human
Oh,
consumption. It is
okay.
an industrial material. And people will sell this to you as an industrial material in an oil base, and what you do with it is your business. Now, here's some things to be advised. Originally, they did it with olive oil. The C60, in my opinion, this is where we're going to get into some of my opinion parts here. C60 works by being combinoric or magnifying other things. So if you're taking a drug of some kind, it may magnify that, or it may magnify your body such that the drug is no longer effective. And we've seen both of these being reported by people that were in that circumstances. So C60 is not particularly gentle. It's not really harsh. You're not going to be vomiting or anything like that for days or anything like that. But because it's combinoric, I don't favor putting it in with olive oil because olive oil has its own impacts towards detoxing the gut, and I don't think they're necessarily beneficial for most humans. So the guy I favor, the fellow that I favor, he makes it and he puts it in avocado oil or coconut. Okay. And in both cases, they're going to be a lot more gentle on you simply because they are not the coconut less so, but they're not themselves detoxing agents the way olive oil is. So if you say the recommended dosage was a tablespoon a day. If you take a tablespoon a day of straight olive oil, you'll feel it in your liver, and even without the C60 involved. So you just have to be very cognizant of this. It's not like it's a panacea. It's not like it's an anti-aging pill or any of that. It is as though you've got to be taking it for a long time because of if you're to obtain any anti-aging benefits. But in terms of lengthening your lifespan, okay? So without getting too far into it, there's a difference between lifespan and life space. What appears to occur here is that our life space is increased, and then if your body is up to it, you can have a longer lifespan within that life space. And that's really a way
You
to
mean
think
like your
about.
code is lengthened? Your
Correct.
clock, I mean.
Correct, correct. And so it restores all of those. It's harmonious to you once you're into the groove of it. And it might take some people a year, but other people maybe only a month. I would not advise taking this if I were a young person. It's not going to do anything for you, until you're actually experiencing some of those effects.
Yeah.
Correct.
They have on the market now TAM 818. I believe it's a 16% effective, not like the 100% effective, but it's more affordable. And so I'm getting, it's not available in this country. It's available in the East, Japan, different places. And I'm going to have my parents start on that. But it's not a full, it's only 16%. It's going to make them feel a lot better, but it's not the full blown deal.
Well, now here is the good part of this, all right? If you were to go to Purple Power, it's called C60 Purple Power online. Okay, that's the guy who sells it in avocado oil and coconut oil.
What is that website again?
C60 Purple Power. Okay. It makes the oil purple colored.
Okay.
And the poor fellow may not be able to keep up with it because it takes days. It takes days to get this stuff to dissolve.
We just gave you a lot of business.
Right. And see, that could be a problem for him, so everybody needs to back off of his case if you order from him and let him make this stuff because he's got to gear up for it, right? And they have to do the little, electric spinners that spin in a vat of oil to dissolve the stuff for days. All of that. He's in the U.S.
Okay.
He's selling an industrial lubricant. Okay. C60 in coconut oil or olive oil is sold as an industrial lubricant.
Okay.
Okay. So if you were to take the olive oil in this or the coconut oil, you will feel better and you'll feel more energy because of the oil that's being provided is a good fat for your system, and because, in my opinion, the C60 is providing a combinoric benefit that is helping to purge out your liver and your gut biome. But from the reported, this is why it needs to be in a book, and you need to have all these cautions. It's better to take the C60 with dairy products than not if you're not lactose intolerant. It's better to take the C60 with raw milk kefir than commercial yogurt. So, and there's all these sort of things that you learn as you go along that make it easier on your system. Because bear in mind, say that you were 80 and that you wanted to get the benefit of this. If indeed this is going to double your lifespan, and there's no reason to suspect that you have to get it by a particular age in order to have that occur, then you're going to have to go through maybe 2 decades of a continual low level of detox in order to reach that 160 years.
Have to keep until every cell and everything is changed around.
Correct. You're brilliant. You're absolutely brilliant. That's exactly what's going on. And it takes 7 years for your bones alone, right? So for 7 years, your bones are going to detox all the crap they've picked up. They're going to get rid of all the radiation, all of the pollution, and all of this kind of stuff that gets into your bones that we can sample bones now and say that, oh, look, this guy was exposed to a nuclear radiation test at some point in his life, and his bones show that, this sort of thing. So we do have those issues. So it's not like a pill. It's not. So you've got to be adult about it. You've got to know what you're doing. You've got to look at it as a decades-long process.
We're at the beginning of anti-aging. Just like any other field, we're starting to figure it out. But you're gonna get gas and sit on the toilet a little bit. We don't quite know how to. The computer takes up the whole room and it can only be a calculator or whatever. It's
correct.
not. We just don't have. But man, it's starting. Because I've talked to enough people and I'm seeing enough stuff. And face it, if we can live to be 200 more years, 200, live to be 300, let's say, which, Liz Parrish, another one I interviewed, she goes, if you can live to be 1,000, why can't you live to be forever? There's no reason why you die at arbitrary age.
There actually is. These people don't ever consider it relative to consciousness and memory.
Okay. Then when you start looking at more science from a different perspective.
Sure, from a different perspective. But from your body, they're correct. Yes.
But now we keep talking about our world we need to grow up in order for us to, this might be our chance to grow up. Maybe we do need
time to mature.
Yeah, maybe we need those few hundred years to be a mature species. We gotta figure out how to purge and not have some lunatic who's in charge for hundreds of years. But
well, yes, there's always that issue, right? But we've had that for some time, There have been butt heads going all the way back.
But maybe that's what we need. We're children. We just don't have enough time to grow up.
Well, the yogis do have and the Chinese even do have this deal where man exits youth at the age of 80. And this is from their history, right? Now, here's some things to think about. In the world when it was young, shungite and asphaltum, the naturally occurring concentrated forms of this stuff, were more readily available in certain areas. And so, how we have the Caucasus Mountains as being an area with lots of 100-year-old people. Well, hey, there's shungite in the water up in there. And so they're drinking water with C60 in it. Water with C60 in it is not as good a way to get the C60 as is the oil, in my opinion, and is also demonstrated by the French. The French, okay, there may be a guy who may have been into this for some considerable time, and I won't betray anything about him. He's the old man in a particular subgroup of people that are self-experimenting with this stuff. And he's the more rational of all the people I've met with and talked about this sort of thing. And he's got a real good sense of it. And his sense is that the biology, that your point that we need that space to mature, that our biology has been really chopped down. And his thinking is that maybe a lot of the structure around history and all of that is to get us to believe in our own minds the limited view that they're projecting of humans in history, right? And that if we had a different view of ourselves, all of a sudden things open up, and even ourselves, just having different levels of thoughts going on about ourselves, create a different environment for our physical body, our energetic body, etc.
Yeah.
And this man, I mean, nobody knows how old he is or how long he's been doing this. But if you have a question about this stuff, and I get a question to this guy, he's got a very definitive answer, and he's never, ever steered me in any way other than exactly, precisely to the correct point of it all. And so I trust his viewpoint at this stage. And so he's got a lot of things to say about it, So for instance,
I love his information because then I can include it in the book.
I can give you the information. I don't know if we can ask questions. And I've got a lot of it coming to me, by the way, because I was going to write a book on my own on this just to get it out. Now that I know you're doing it, I won't bother, right?
Well,
now that
I'll show you the cover.
I've got enough stuff to do. Yeah. But anyway, so there's a lot of references here, a lot of research being done by Russians about this, because that's where shungite is really found anymore, is in Siberia and some of these places. And you can go online now to Amazon. If you wanted to take a low key approach to this, you could go buy shungite rocks. And they do this in Russia, and they do it in Germany. When I got to Germany, I saw this going on all the time. And this is back in the days when they still had honey wagons collecting human waste to put on the fields. Okay, so it was before Germany was 100% really rebuilt into the modern age. And you would see some of the old farmers that we lived nearby. The women would every week they would take the black rocks out of the crock and wash the rocks off and put new water in there, and then they drank water out of that crock all week long. And it was shungite. And it restored them, made it healthy, and so on. Oh, that was something.
How did they know how to do that? It must have been passed down through.
Correct. Shaman and the alchemists have been working on this for a long time. We're a remnant civilization. They probably knew about this stuff way
before. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And so we have the records of it, and that's why the alchemists were trying to always rediscover. They were always looking for something that had been discovered in the past, that was known. They could isolate it. I mean, they could describe what they were after. They just didn't know how to create it. And that's why all of the alchemy, all of our chemistry and everything was trying to recreate, and even the word alchemy, or from which we derive chemistry, right? And it's an Arabic word, alchem, 1 point, okay? And the thing is that 1 point is in fact the whole thing they were after was C60, and they didn't know it. And so they're boiling down everything they could think of to try and create this deep black stuff that they knew that it came from. And they were isolated from it, right? They didn't have asphaltum, and once the Roman Empire fell apart, there were no longer trains bringing this stuff from the glaciers in India over to the Romans. And we have all kinds of anti-aging things in Egypt with the pharaohs. And it was not energetic, and it was all related to darkness and to blackness. And the one thing about C60 is it absorbs light. It's a weird molecule when you play around with it on its own. It seems to react to and cluster around lasers that are shot through the oil. So it seems to want to, so somehow the photonic energy seems to be drawing it.
Which draws in that energy that you need, maybe somehow. What's interesting is when you read the Bible or you read they talk about us living a long time.
Right.
There's there's just something more here, and we're on the edge, where people are playing with it and people are seeing results.
And it's breaking out. Now, this I like.
And you're seeing it in your data sets.
I saw it some time back, and then I investigated it and have been doing research now on this for 5 or 6 years, maybe, because it was just like the cryptocurrencies. Around 2005, I started seeing stuff in the data sets about what would become an anti-aging movement within the general part of humanity. Like everybody else, I assumed we had to liberate it from the ruling elites, but that's not the case. It's being brought up organically, so to speak, from grassroots out of the populations as a result of everybody wanting to use buckyballs for lubricants within industrial machines and needing to find out a lethal dose on it. Now, there are people out there that are replicating the rat studies. You've got other people that are doing studies on extracted chicken livers, keeping those alive with C60.
That is
all different
so
kinds of stuff.
interesting.
Now, let's get back to the appearance, though. Okay, you're going to get more energy taking this stuff, and that's true. And so you may want to, for an older person, you may want to ease them into a little tiny bit so that they get the feeling of what the detox might be like. Your diet will adjust. Okay,
well, you can build up your dosage.
Correct. And then at some point you get into the thing, and you as an old guy, and I'm 64, and you get up to the point where you would take some of this stuff, and the energy involved would be pretty good.
Are you taking it now?
Yeah, for 19 months.
And you feel different.
I was suffering from 30 plus years of a disease that would have killed me this year had I not gotten on top of it.
And now is it gone?
Yeah, but not because of that. I found that after getting into trying to cure the disease part, right? I mean, I was racked by a liver disease, basically. Well, hey, one of the things you find if you look long enough is you'll find this connection between liver or hepatic protection and hepatic rebuilding, reconstitution, and C60. There's actually documents that you can get through the NIH now about C60 rebuilding liver tissue. And so once you start getting into that, if you've got a liver disease and you recognize you've got a liver disease, you start doing more investigation, and next thing you know, you're on this particular trail, right? And so you get more energy out of it. It has weird effects. You start talking to some of the individuals that are taking it, and one guy is complaining that he's got 2 eyebrow hairs that he has to cut every day at least an inch off of. Okay.
His eyebrow hair keeps growing.
And he can pluck them. He can pluck them out. And the one time and the reason he has 2 is that he had 1, he plucked it out, and 2 grew. So he's not going to pluck it out again. But he says he cuts an inch off every day. Other people, it's toenails. They've got to trim their toenails every 2 days because of the exceptional growth. Other people, it's veins that are just new veins that are just growing all throughout your body as it's oxygenating and building and everything. And here's some of the other side effects. If you're taking this stuff and you were to be involved in an accident, or you have to go and get even a routine blood draw, the phlebotomist might freak out because they'll draw venal blood, but it'll look like arterial because it'll be so oxygenated and so red they'll think they hit an artery. And this has actually occurred numerous times. I mean, it's become somewhat
freaking them out.
It does, and it's become a sort of a story. Oh, I had my phlebotomist encounter, is what some of these people will say. Now, bear in mind, I lose a lot in translation because a lot of it is in French and sort of a patois of French and Russian and German, because these are the primary researchers in it and the primary self-researchers. The French seem to have been into it longer than anybody else except for the Russians. The Russians are somewhat closed-mouthed about they come at it from the Shungite approach as opposed to the industrial compound approach. And they have a longer history of it, though, in messing around with it. And now you're starting to see Shungite come out in all different kinds of forms. And people are saying that, oh, well, you wear the medallion and it helps you out. And it may help you out because the C60 in there absorbs energy, like in electromagnetic stuff, but it's not going to do you anything.
It's not the same.
Not the same, no. Yeah. Just like taking it in water is not the same as taking it in oil because it doesn't get taken up into the liver. And it may have been a happy accident or universe saying we needed to know about this. Let's tell the Frenchmen to use oil and go to all that trouble as opposed to making them drink it. Because you wouldn't believe what they've got to go through to get this stuff to be in a suspension in oil. So it's just weird
that they did it in oil in the first place.
Correct.
How interesting is that? Aging is so fascinating to me because there isn't anything that we've invented, I think, that'll change the world more than that. I mean, it'll fundamentally change everything.
Yeah, and just giving us the range to mature and be, able to think about things longer, deeper and longer is the issue, I think.
And letting kids be kids longer, letting scientists do their thing for longer.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, just so many things. Yeah, we'll have other issues, which
Yeah,
I have a whole
yeah.
chapter on the